Hi everyone, Eamonn Boyle here from Instil Software. Today we're going to look at building a Docker image. I want to show you how easy it is to build a Docker image and use it as your unit of deployment. I have to build something, so the technology stack I've decided to use is .NET Core. I really like .NET, I really like C#. .NET Core is very exciting, cross-platform, so we can run web services and web applications on Linux. And I'm going to take that image that we're going to build around that application and deploy it on Azure. Okay, so our main focus is Docker, but you'll have a nice little aside of .NET Core if you haven't seen it before. There's quite a lot to go through, so I'm going to go through it really quickly, and I've actually broken this up into two videos, one where I build the image and one where I deploy it. And there's loads of different ways we can deploy, but you'll get to see one variation of that. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to create our project directory. I'm just going to call it Docker Test. And all the tooling with .NET Core is via .NET, so I can do .NET new, which news up projects, and there's a series of templates. And the template I'm going to use is MVC. So when we do that, we'll have a project. Awesome. Now, there's one thing I have to do inside our program is just tell it to use any URL, because it's going to run inside a container, and if I don't do this, then it's going to be bound to localhost only and will fail outside of the container. So if we do that, everything should be good to go. So again, with .NET Core, all the tooling is available from the command line. So first thing I need to do is do restore, which pulls down any dependencies and sets up build configuration files. Then I can do a build. Let's build it as release. Okay, and we're going to publish this into something for Docker. So I'm going to just create myself a little Docker directory inside here, and I'm going to say .NET publish, which basically takes all of the built files and dependencies and bungs them into a folder. So I'm going to publish the release, and I'm going to stick it in docker/publish. Okay, so if we go and take a look at what we've produced so far, we've got a series of assemblies here, and this is a framework dependent deployment within .NET Core, so you still need the .NET Core runtime to run this kind of published output, okay? But it's pulled in all of the dependencies that aren't part of the runtime, and it's built up our project, which is called Docker Test. So you can see here it's actually built our application as well. So I can run that with the runtime saying .NET and then just the name of the assembly, and that's going to spin up a web server. This is going to spin up Kestrel. It's serving on port 5000. So if we go to a web browser and go to port 5000, we can see our application is running. Okay, so that's awesome. So let's go back here and kill that, and now let's package this up into an image. So our unit of deployment, our artifact, is going to be a Docker image. Okay, so it's going to contain the runtime as well as all of these files. So the reason that I created it inside a Docker directory is because whenever we're going to build up our image, it's going to copy all of the files to the Docker engine to build up the image. So we normally want to have all of the things that we're going to use inside the image away from the rest of our source, or else all of that directory structure will be copied. So now all we're going to copy down to the engine is the published directory. So to create a Docker image, we use a Docker file. So by convention, this is a capital D Docker file. And this is just a text file with a series of commands that tells the engine how to build up the image. Okay, so there's lots of commands, and you can check the documentation and see all of the different things that are available. But the first thing that you're going to define is the from command, and this is setting the base image, because Docker images are built up of a series of layers of other Docker images. So you can choose what your starting point is, and it's usually a very cut down version of Linux or Windows, and then you build upon the functionality. But when you're doing things like Java, you can start from a Java image. When you're doing Swift, you can start from a Swift image. We're going to be doing .NET Core, so we can start from a .NET Core image as our starting point. So if we go to Docker Hub, which is where we go and search for everything when we're using Docker, we can see that there's a Microsoft/.NET image. So we can use this as our starting point. Okay? And if you remember, we talked about tags, which are like the versions within these repositories. So we have a Microsoft.NET repository, and inside there we've got lots of different versions. So the version we're going to use is 1.1.2 because that's the version that I'm using to build here. And we're going to use this Jesse flavor. So I'm going to say 1.1.2 runtime Jesse. Okay, so that's our base image. So what else do we want to do on top of that base image? Well, we're going to copy in the contents of the published directory, and let's just put them into a published folder. We're going to want to expose our port, so let's expose 5000. We're going to change directory, which is workdir, into the published folder. And again, this is all happening inside the Docker engine as it's building up these images. So these aren't happening locally on our machine. These are happening inside this Jesse image. And then we define what happens when we are running an image. Our image should be set up by now. We've copied our files. We've changed directory. So now we can say what's our entry point going to be. What's going to happen when we run this image. And what we want to run is .NET dockertest.dll because that's what we ran manually. Okay, so that should be our image setup. And to build it, we do docker build the current directory, and it's going to automatically find the Docker file. And we're going to tag it -t. We're going to tag it with a name so that we can refer to it, and we're going to call it again just the name of the project, Docker Test. Why not? So you can see here that it's building up all of these individual layers. Every single step of our file is producing a new image, and this is the way that Docker works. It's every step is a new immutable image, and multiple Docker images can have the same parent, saving disk space, speeding up the build process, and all of these good things. But we now have our image, so I can do docker run. The file I'm going to run, or the image I'm going to run, is Docker test, and that's going to spin up a container that runs that Docker test. And remember that containers are going to be completely isolated, including network. So if we want to expose the port, which was 5000, we have to use the -p. Okay, and the -p is host port followed by container port. So I'm actually going to expose it locally on port 80, and I'm going to map that to 5000 inside our container. Okay, I'm actually going to do 81 because I may have another instance of this running. Okay, so you can see here that has spun up our application, but no longer on Windows, because this is a Windows machine. No longer on Windows. This is on a container running Linux that has the runtime, that has our application, and it's just I can see it here on my terminal. It's been forwarded to my terminal. And if we talk to localhost 81, it should forward inside the container to port 5000. This thing's listed on 5000, so let's just give that a go. So if we go here, and instead of going to localhost 5000, we go to 81. You can see here that we've got our application up and running. Okay, so now we have basically created our own image. We can see that by doing DockerImages, and we can see here there is a Docker test image. So we could deploy this image to a server. We could deploy this onto something running on Azure. In fact, let's go ahead and do this. Join me in part 2 where we'll take our image and deploy it on Azure. See you then.